Good morning, possibly evening, perhaps afternoon. Today is Wednesday, May the 12th, 2021. This is precisely 241 years ago since the last major, crucial victory at the siege of Charleston by the British armies against the revolutionary American forces. I'm saying crucial because this was and would have been the last major victory by the British in the conflict. Eventually, with more and more help by the French and even the Spanish, which dogpiled against the British over time, in just a little over a year, the American would have eventually ended up driving the British away from their 13 colonies. So on this revolutionary note, we are going to point out that there has been an additional revolution in this new build of the PTR, build 38627. This has brought some balance changes, it has brought some additional legendaries of the specs that were missing, and a few other things related to 9.1, related to the Mega Dungeon, related to the new borrowed power you can find inside of the new raid, Sanctum of Domination. So first, in this video, we are going to go over the balance changes and the additions in the game, and the plans that Blizzard has for these specs. So let's start with the first one, which is pet related. Just for one class, Warlock. So what's happening with Warlock? It's pretty interesting, actually. Basically, Blizzard is now trying to make pets benefit from damage increases that your class has. Not from everything, not from all the types of enchants, passives, or legendaries, but from very specific things. So, for Destruction, Eradication is now going to also increase the damage done by your pets. For Affliction, both Haunt and Shadow Embrace, since if you haven't kept up with the 9.1 changes, and you should, because I posted them on this channel, Shadow Embrace will become a talent in 9.1 in the same row of Haunt. Both of these options are going to increase the damage of your pets and guardians, and then from the shadows for Demonology is also going to increase your pets' Shadow Flame damage. Now, of course, completely unsurprisingly, this is going to be more powerful for Demonology than for Affliction and for Destruction. Affliction and Destruction do not do much damage with their pets, only, of course, the Infernal and the Dark Glare for both, besides their own normal summoned pet if they use it. There is, though, a main difference that needs to be pointed out. At the moment, the only spec that would comfortably gain this buff for free without actually changing their build would be Affliction. Affliction is already playing with Haunt, and even when Shadow Embrace becomes a talent, if it becomes viable in terms of numbers, it would be used in multi-target situations, they would still gain the benefit of pet damage on that talent. The difference here is for Destruction and for Demonology. Destruction might kind of want it, because Infernal is a very big cooldown window, so empowering their Infernal even for a small window is still going to empower your burst, which can be very powerful. The current problem is that Destruction is super tight with playing with Fleshover, the talent that makes it even smoother to play around Conflagrate. You know, they already play very often with Roaring Blaze, which already buffs and synergizes with Conflagrate. They have an entire legendary they are playing centered around Conflagrate. And this buff, this pet buff, would go on Eradication, which is in the same row of Fleshover. So they would have to lose Fleshover to be able to gain this pet buff. A similar situation is going to happen for Demonology, because most Demonology players currently are going to be playing with Vilefiend. Because of the weird way, in case you haven't kept up with Demonology, so pretty much everyone, Demonology is in this weird situation where they scale in damage a little bit with stamina as well, because they play with Demonic Consumption. Demonic Consumption is going to make your Tyrant, your big cooldown, drain the HP of all your demons being active. The demons have the HP which scales from your stamina, so of course the more stamina you have, the more HP they have, and the more the Tyrant gets empowered, but more importantly, even more than stamina, is how many pets you can summon. And in the row where this new buff would be put is in From the Shadows, which is in the same row of Summon Vilefiend, which is another talent that is generally always taken by Demonology Warlocks. So ironically, while this buff could be 2 to 3 times more powerful for a Demonology Warlock than for the other Warlock specs, they would have to lose one of the talents they use almost always to be able to gain this buff. So it's gonna be up to tuning, to numbers, and to simulations to see if this is even worth. It does look like it's not gonna be as big of a buff as it would imply, simply because you would have to lose a very powerful talent that you're already playing with. Now on to the other changes. The main class, okay, the main class that was being targeted by these changes was Paladin. So let's start with the first one. Paladin has gotten Flash of Light nerfed, but I have to be very careful here, otherwise people are gonna get confused. As usual, the nerf is going to affect just Protection Paladin and Retribution Paladin, so the off-spec healing. I have seen plenty of people complain, particularly about Red Paladin and their off-healing, and the instant Flash of Light, or just being able to hide yourself and heal yourself to full with Flash of Light was pretty annoying, and Flash of Light is basically getting cut in half in terms of healing. Because now Flash of Light goes from currently what you have right now in live, 67% increased healing done, by Flash of Light now is down to 39% bonus. The difference is that at the same time Flash of Light, and this is what Holy Paladins are going to benefit the most, gets its spell power coefficient buffed. So it goes from 168% of your spell power to 202% of your spell power. So for the mathematically impaired, this is a 20% healing buff for Holy Paladins specifically. Now, of course, you have the question if you have played Holy Paladin or if you have played with and around Holy Paladins. But Holy Paladins never cast. They never even use Flash of Light. Yes, that is exactly the point why this ability is getting buffed. And it doesn't end here for Holy Paladin because it goes further. Number 1, Crusader's Might is getting nerfed. This is one of the cornerstone talents that makes the whole damage paladin thing, because this talent makes your near spammable strike reduce the cooldown of Holy Shock. Before it was 1.5 seconds and now it is getting nerfed to 1 second. This is the exact same nerf that is currently happening to Kindling for Fire Mage and the reduction of combustion cooldown. And the changes for Holy Paladin don't just end here, because Infusion of Light is also getting changed. Again, it's not that Holy Paladins are actually using this a lot because they are not casting. So Blizzard is trying to add some changes. The previous version, which is what you have right now in live, made the next Infusion of Light reduce the cast time of Flash of Light or empower the healing of the next Holy Light by 30%. So you either get a mana discount on Flash of Light or you get your increase in effectiveness on your Holy Light. The change is that you can still get your mana discount on your Flash of Light, but now casting Holy Light is going to generate 1 Holy Power. I think this might be of help for a Holy Paladin, because normally they don't want to cast, but there are some situations where they have to move away from the boss, from the enemy, right? And because of mechanics, because of grouping and strategies and whatnot. So having this new passive, which rather than increasing the heal of your Holy Light, which you don't care about because you don't cast it enough for this to be worth, making it generate 1 extra Holy Power on top of what you can generate from casting it on your beacon target could be pretty good. You could get yourself to max Holy Power as you are doing a mechanic or stacking for some mechanic, and then go back to doing your normal scheduled DPS rotation. I think it could help for how little this could amount to. What is not going to be little is the nerf that Holy Paladin is also getting to their damage done, because the time has come where the damage of Holy Paladin is getting hit. Every single ability in the Paladin's arsenal for Holy is getting nerfed by 8%. Don't pay attention to all the rest that you see here for Ret and Protection. This is just for Holy. So 8%, Judgment, Crusader Strike, Consecration, even Ashen Hallow, everything that Holy Paladin can use in its kit is gonna get nerfed in damage by 8%. Now, just to make it clear, Holy Paladin is well ahead than just doing 8% more damage than the other healers. Currently is closer to 50 to 70% more damage than the other healers. This is certainly not a make or break type of situation. I'm also interested in the original comments from Eon, who said they viewed Ashen Hallow as a pretty problematic ability. And you're right, it doesn't just end here for Holy Paladin, because the nerfs continue. First of all, Crusader Strike also gets a mana nerf, because it used to cost 9% of your base mana, now it's gonna cost 11% of your base mana. But the other, more poignant nerf is the even more focused damage nerfs, because on top of the 8% damage nerf to all abilities, Holy Paladin also gets the 10% damage nerf to Ashen Hallow, to Hammer of Wrath, and Judgment. So as mentioned, this whole supposed focus on Ashen Hallow still comes with the baggage of another couple of abilities, Hammer of Wrath and Judgment. So there is something important to point out here. All of these abilities are basically getting nerfed by 8% by default, and now also the 10%. So what is left out? Well, the melee auto attack, which is actually something like 10 to 12% of the damage of a Holy Paladin, is still there. What is also left out is Consecration, which gets the 8% nerf but doesn't get further nerfed even more, and also Holy Shock is the one that also only gets nerfed by 8%, as well as Crusader Strike, which is 7 to 8% of your damage. So effectively, the bigger chunk of your damage as a Holy Paladin, which is roughly 40% of your total damage, is getting the 8% and the 10% damage nerf. The TLDR, as I already said, is still that Holy Paladin will be doing the most damage of all healers, and with Ashen Hallow we still have very powerful burst, which might still likely keep it at the top, at the very least when it comes to Mythic Plus, because of the damage requirement of healers being very important. And when it comes to raids, absolutely nothing is being done to Aura Mastery, so by default it's still going to be very powerful, and it's still going to have its spot in a raid. But this was definitely necessary to address the damage that Holy Paladin was doing, and we will have to see if it's going to be enough, or if it's going to be too much, but that's unlikely. I don't think this is nearly too much to be considered very bad. I don't think this is nearly in the realm of being possibly too much. So Holy Paladin was really the main focus of this initial round of changes for this version of the PTR. Now for the next couple of specs getting changed, we have Holy Priest. Now, the hype train of Holy Priest is continuing straight for 9.1. We are within the last 2 or 3 stops before this train is not going to allow anyone else on. These are your last chances to hop on the hype train. It's getting buffed in Symbol of Hope. Again, after Symbol of Hope is already planned to give you a 60 seconds of cooldown reduction to one of your defensives in 9.1, the mana being regenerated is now going to be buffed from 12% of their missing mana to 18% of their missing mana, which is decent, but you always still have to remind yourself that it's missing mana, not total mana. So even if you were to use this when most of your healers had 50% of their mana left, it would be about 9% of their mana. So we're talking about the equivalent of not even a shitty 6000 mana potion for every healer. Still pretty helpful. It can still be pretty helpful, particularly in progression, when you're undergeared, when the bosses are unnerfed still, when your raid is making more mistakes because they're still learning the fight and whatnot. Mana is going to become more of an issue, and this could be more helpful. There is also a teeny tiny change to Balanced Druid. Amongst the nerfs that Balanced Druid has received, Stellar Drift is getting slightly unnerfed in the duration of the cooldown of Starfall. As you know, Blizzard is planning in 9.1 to change the talent Stellar Drift. So instead of allowing you to cast on the move while Starfall is active and giving it a 15% damage increase, the damage increase goes to 50%, which is a massive buff, but the cost for it was that Starfall had a 15-second cooldown, and also it lost the 2 extra seconds of duration. Instead of lasting for 10 seconds and doing 15% more damage, it lasts for 8 and does 50% more, but it has a 15-second cooldown. So it's possibly okay in short AoE bursts where the targets can die within 10 seconds, so you don't need to reapply Starfall. That would have been kind of okay, but still pretty annoying to have it on cooldown. Now there is a change. The cooldown goes from 15 seconds to 12. So now there is an 8-second duration with a 12-second cooldown, which means over 20 seconds is basically going to be active for 16. That's the idea. I am afraid that this overreaction of the Balanced Druid is going to push Blizzard to unnerf this to the point that somehow, some way, Balanced Druid will find itself in 9.1 with an even stronger Starfall that they had in 9.0. That would annoy me a little bit. The last of the specs being changed in terms of abilities is going to be Warrior. Warrior gets another change to its Execute. Again, by this point, Execute and Condemn have been changed like a dozen times. I don't know what is the fear of Blizzard. It's like Initially, they nerfed Execute and particularly Condemn a lot, and then they realized Warriors started saying, fuck it, I don't care, I'm not going to use it anymore, I don't care about Condemn, I'm just going to go Night Fae, play Fury, and just ignore Execute. So Execute is getting buffed again. 10% more damage on Execute. Now, these were all the changes related to the classes for PvE for now. What we are also going through today is the more data mining of the Shards of Domination. We have touched on this before, about the additions of these new sockets, these special sockets found in raid gear as Blizzard's, so to speak, solution to make raiders have a specific empowered raid gear that will be stronger within the raid and basically for raid purposes only. Or at least this is what we were told a few weeks ago when Ion explained the Shards of Domination system. Apparently they probably thought about any possible backlash or, frustration from the rest of the player base not interested or not into raiding. So instead, now these gems are not going to be limited to raiding. Yes, the gear that needs to be socketed will only drop from the raid. Yes, possibly these Shards of Domination will also drop from the raid. However, once you put them into your gear, they will work everywhere. This means Mythic Plus, and this means PvP, arenas, rated battlegrounds, everywhere else. The only place where these shards are intended to give you a power-up specific for raids is going to be the set bonus. The set bonus from the Rune World, having the 3 same colored gems is what is going to work only within the raid. So initially there were just a few of them and they were pretty simplistic, and then in the PTR we started getting a specific buff active at all times when you were within the Maw or Torghast called Runic Dominion. The presence of domination magic is especially strong within this area, while within the Maw, equipping 3 Shards of Domination of the same type will grant you the power of a Rune Ward. So these Shards of Domination have gotten data mined again, the old ones have disappeared, some of them are still here, they have just gotten renamed. So some of these effects are interesting. So you have some effects like the Unholy Healing Shard. Your helpful spells and abilities have a chance to grant your target an unholy aura, draining 110 health from nearby enemies. And then others are more question mark, like your speed is increased. That's it. Just go faster. There are other, flat out numbers worthy runes, like damaging a target increases your damage done to that target by 0.5% up to 2.5% more damage. This would be one of the strongest, of course, for single target fights. It's a flat out 2.5% more damage. As boring as it is, very often when you want to sim your top damage, this is the type of thing that is going to come on top. There are also some pretty interesting specific situation shards which are going to come very handy, like the blood damage shard, the Shard of Beck. Your damage is increased by 8%, which is massive, when you have 50% or more health than your target. This is obviously an Execute shard. Whenever you're going to have a fight where the boss's hardest part is going to be the last phase, this is going to be extremely powerful, of course. Now, the announcement of the whole Rune World thing is basically like the meta socket. Some people at this point, and I'm sad to say this, are actually too young to remember what a meta socket is. A meta socket was a type of special socket stronger than all the others that only activated if you used certain types of colors of gems in your gear. So for example, you needed 2 red and 2 blue gems in your gear to be able to activate the meta socket, which was found in your helmet. In this case, it works the same, just with the same colors. You have the purple shards, the blue shards, and the red shards, and you have to have them all of the same color to get the bonus. For now, we have no idea what the bonus is. What is also pretty interesting is that we also don't have any indication of what these colors mean, because every one of these colors can have some damaging effects, some healing effects, some tanking effects. So it's not that the blue shard is going to be the tank shard and the purple shard is going to be the healer shard and the red shard is going to be the damage shard. So it's also going to be pretty interesting to see what type of bonus you're going to get, considering it's not going to be limited to your role. It's basically a rehashed version of the Diablo 2 rune words, more or less, but way more simplistic for what we have right now. I don't particularly mind this type of thing. I was more worried with PvE players being forced to go into PvP to get top gear. The fact that PvE players from raid can get raid-worthy gear in the raid, I don't really care. I'm not really that excited about this system. It's not that I'm happy that someone who only does Mythic Plus can't have this. I am mostly unconcerned with this. I'm just hoping it's not gonna be a pain to get these, because so far we also have no idea where they drop. Do they drop from bosses, or can they drop from Demo and Torghast and Korthia, basically doing dailies and stuff like that? And if they drop from bosses, do they drop as a guarantee, or do they drop like relics from Legion, meaning you could seriously go several weeks before even finding one of these? So one of these is going to be best in slot, and you will go killing boss after boss after boss, and it's going to never drop. How certain is it going to be? The other worrying thing is that on the items themselves, they have item levels, and the previous data mine version of these shards, they also had different ranks. So is it going to change based on the raid difficulty, for example? For now, there is no more information to present about this system. I just hope it's not going to get too out of hand, it's not going to be too randomized, and it's going to allow people to get whatever they want quickly, okay? So, we can stop here for today. Tomorrow, very likely, we're going to go over all of the new 9 or so legendaries for the new classes that Blizzard announced, which is Warlock, Priest, and Hunter. I think they were the last of the classes. I think only Monk is left, no surprise. So, thank you guys for watching the video. If you enjoyed this, you should subscribe. If you don't, just remember, I know where you live. So, see you guys soon, and in the meantime, I am cautiously optimistic. I don't see too much borrowed power drama coming around this tier. I'm hopeful.